and welcome to episode number 305 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show, everyone's favourite low-cost airline has their luggage policy deemed abusive by the courts, and a disruptive passenger is jailed for trying to open a cabin door mid-flight, and a US entrepreneur opens his fifth airline. In the military news this week, we explore how the Air Force evacuates patients from biological hazard areas. That's good for Matt here. Hey. And Captain John Hutchinson talks to Nik about some of the perks of being Concorde Pilot, and we have some great audio feedback from Nik Codling. But joining me this week, as always, here in the PTUK studios is my co-host Matt Smith, and joining us via the line this week in an airport somewhere in the world, it's Armando. How are we all?
So I got to stop the music. Talk to me first.
How are you, Matt?
I'm all right, thank you. Yes, I'm not bad. He can't hear until I stop the music at the other end. You see, that's the trouble. Oh dear, I knew there was a flaw in
the perks of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, mate. How about you? It's nice to have you back.
Nice to be back, honestly.
Yeah, been skiving the last 2 weeks. Good reasons, I know, but
yes. It's been a hard last couple of or last few days, but
we'll
no,
perhaps
I'm
talk
back.
about that a bit later.
Yeah, but it's yes, I'm back, and it's nice to be back in the studio. It's nice to see you've kept things tidy in here.
Yes. I actually put the Hoover around specially.
Oh, good. You know. And we're just missing some snacks. But Matt did have, I can confirm, Matt did have a rather large piece of fruitcake before we started the show.
It was delicious. An unusual layer in the fact that all the fruit had gone to the bottom.
But it was still lovely.
It was absolutely delicious, absolutely. But never mind all that. We have somebody on the other end who's literally sat. I think the best way to describe this, he's literally sat in looks like a departure lounge. Where are you, Armando?
Yeah, hello everybody. I am in Terminal 4 at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. A little bit later, I'll probably show you the view because it is absolutely gorgeous here. It is sunny, there's palm trees, there's not a cloud in the sky, and this is a wonderful terminal that they've just finished in the last year, I think. So it's looking great.
Yeah. Armando, could you please explain to us what that is behind you on that platform?
The blue thing.
I would love to.
Right, okay, good.
For those of you listening to the audio podcast, there is a blue-coloured
I don't know what to describe that.
thing.
I don't know, is it a weird kind of it's a piece of art, that's what it is.
I thought you were going to say then, a weird kind of and you sort of stopped then, or you were going to say
I don't know. No, shoe. Careful. Family show, ladies and gentlemen, family show.
So guys, real quick before we continue on, it is Valentine's Day. I would be remiss if I didn't send a huge shout out to my lovely wife who has supported me, and to every spouse and partner out there in the world that supports each other, especially in aviation, because it's such a weird business to be in. But happy Valentine's Day to both my lovely bride, Megan, and my daughter, Maddie, who I sent a Valentine's Day present to, which was mostly just snacks.
Oh, yeah, ticking all the boxes. That's the answer. Well, that's very
happy
very
Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there today.
So that's great. I mean, we all know why I'm sat here doing the show, because basically I'm sad, lonely, and nobody loves me. But I mean, like the lovely Nev and the lovely Armando, who both have beautiful wives. You have a beautiful wife, and here you are sat next to me on Valentine's Day instead of cuddling your beautiful wife. What is the matter with you?
That's because I love Matt. He's lovely, honestly.
Right.
For those of you who haven't had a chance to hug Matt yet, he's a lovely guy.
My hugs are award-winning.
Do you guys know that we are literally living out the scene in Love Actually 3/4 through the movie, where you have the rock star and the manager, and they just realize they can't be without each other.
No, that's true. That is true. Yeah, no, that is true.
Accents and everything. I feel like I'm watching a real life, real time Love Actually, guys.
Pay attention, because essentially it's going to get very dull as we go further into the show. It's going to be less and less like Love Actually as we get started. But
So a big warm welcome to everyone who's joined us in the chat room this evening. All the usual family members in there. Auntie Liz, Tanya's in there, Richard Adams, Chris Griggs, hello to you, Chris. Cheryl Mandrake, hello to you, Cheryl. Welcome, haven't seen you for a while. Hope you're well. Dave Abbey. Hello to you, Dave Abbey.
In New York.
In New York.
Lara. Sorry.
Lara Megan Carrion's just come in the chat. Remember
Never
she heard her
Who's
name
that?
being called.
Did she? Right. Okay.
And also Neville Bounds is in the chat room as well.
Well, at least we started on time. That's the main thing.
I know.
Yeah, slightly less.
So Nev's off this week. He's busy sunning himself in the Caribbean, so Nev won't be on the show this week.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. Right, presumably with his wife.
Yeah, he'll come in next week with a tan, as
Okay.
always.
Right, good. And on that bombshell.
Yes. So I think we better start things off.
Okay,
so,
all right, yeah.
So we are going to start the show then, as we do each week, with our rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if everyone is ready...
Yeah, I'm ready.
Ready to go?
Let's go.
So, kicking off this week's first news story, oh God, I've looked forward to saying that for so long. This is on the cbc.ca website, and it's the airline...
Can I just get it out of my system first?
It's the airline manufacturer that Matt loves to call...
Bombardier!
Thank you.
That's it. I'll be all right now. It's fine. I've got it out of my system.
Bombardier exits the commercial aircraft business and it sells its remaining A220 stake to Airbus. So Bombardier is getting out of the commercial aviation business as the company moves to pay down its massive debt. The Quebec-based aircraft and train maker said late on Wednesday this week that it sold its remaining stake in the A220 program, formerly known as the C-Series, to the giant that is Airbus. Bombardier has been recognised its business as an effort to pay off a multi-billion-dollar debt. It released its financial results for 2019 on Thursday, and Bombardier currently has more than $9 billion US worth of debt in its books against annual revenues of just over $15 billion. The company posted an annual loss of $1.6 billion for the fiscal year, which that's not too bad, which is why the company is moving to sell off its assets to shore up its balance sheet. They said that we are looking at options, said CEO Alan Bellemare. He said, as you can understand, it's a very sensitive. The reason why we're looking at strategic options is to accelerate the leveraging of the business. The strategy was always to exit commercial aircraft, said Bellemare, who has been the CEO since 2015. Under the new deal, Airbus now owns 75% of Bombardier's commercial aviation business. The Quebec government, which is not injecting any new money into the program, owns 25%. Airbus will pay Bombardier $591 million for the stake, and the deal means Bombardier will no longer be required to make investments of approximately $700 million into the program. The deal also includes a 3-year guarantee of the jobs, which is always good, belonging to the 360 people who construct the aircraft's cockpits at the plant in Montreal, in the borough of Ville-Saint-Laurent. After that, they will be transferred to Maribel-Guy. I guess that's how you sell it, or Q. In an Airbus said that the deal secures a total of 3,300 jobs in Quebec. Bombardier said in January that it was reassessing its ongoing participation in its partnership with Airbus to manufacture the A220.
So now, just out of interest, I mean, how do we feel about this story? Because, I mean, the big thing is for me personally, Bombardier was one of the few companies that was really trying, if you like, not to steal like Boeing and Airbus's crowd, but it was the only real. And I know most of the stuff they did were like the little regional jets, weren't they? That the people would be using. But I mean, part of me feels that this is a bit sad. It's a bit actually sad that they're leaving what we know as commercial aviation. I mean, I don't know, Armando, what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I'm curious. Now, it didn't really specify. It says it's selling off its commercial aircraft division. That they're pretty big into the private sector right now. They're still making the Challenger, the Global series. I think they were even making Learjets. So
right.
I'm curious if they're going to continue to do, because the Global is a very good selling airplane. It's probably the future of business aviation. Yeah. So I wonder if Airbus will pick up that division also. Very curious. I mean,
because they've had shares in it for a while, haven't they? Airbus have had shares in Bombardier for a while, haven't they? And I think this is a lot of this is where they've actually taken a larger stake in this, haven't they? If I recall. So I think it's something like nearly 75% now, isn't it? I think you read it out, didn't you? They were saying, but I mean, I don't know what the chat room. Oh, hello. Don't know. Is that me? Apparently, I've just received an email. Sorry about that. Sorry. I mean, I don't know what the chat room thinks about this, but I mean, Liz is just saying that us Canadian taxpayers have been propping them up for years. They had to do this, which is a good point. So I suppose it's better than one going bust. Isn't it? I guess. But
Airbus, we all know Airbus. They're loving the 220. The A220. This is a really popular aircraft. Yeah. Airbus have kind of rubbing their hands together. I think that they've got this off.
Well, I think the Airbus, the 220 is going to start selling much quicker now. We're going to have a story a little bit later about a new airline that is going solely with the Airbus 220.
Yeah, which is exciting for them, as you say. Mike has suggested that he's been being propped up by the Canadian government for quite some time as well, which is sad to hear. Sorry about that, Micah. Anyway, we'll move on to the next story, and I'm a little bit sad about this story. This is on Skift.com. Obviously, story number 2 means it's a Ryanair story, and essentially, I mean, this is my own little headline. I'm gonna say this out loud. I'm gonna put it out there. The king of spin is moving on. Ryanair's marketing boss, Kenny Jacobs, the one whose sound bites we all love, is leaving the airline. So Kenny Jacobs is a well-known member of Ryanair's senior management team, and he's frequently represented the airline at industry events. Given his prominent role at the company, his departure is something of a shock. Ryanair Chief Marketing Officer Kenny Jacobs, who spearheaded the airline's drive to improve customer service, that went well, is to leave his position after 6 years at the end of April to pursue other challenges, he told Reuters on Monday. Jacobs, who joined Ryanair at the start of 2014, was the architect of the airline's always getting better drive to improve customer service, and was charged with overhauling the company's website to adapt to individual customer preferences. I will enjoy a summer off with the family and then look for my next challenge, he said. Chief Executive Michael O'Leary said in an emailed statement that Ryanair's digital presence and customer service had been transformed under Jacobs over the last 6 years. Over the period, Ryanair has boosted the proportion of its revenue earned from optional extras such as assigned seating and additional baggage from just over 20% to over 30%. Kenny was the author of the successful Always Getting Better brand 6 years ago when he first joined, and he has championed many of the successful customer service improvements we have launched in recent years, which has underpinned our successful growth and evolution, O'Leary said. So the move comes as Ryanair shifts to a group structure, appointing chief executives to lead several smaller subsidiaries, with each reporting to O'Leary as group chief executive. His exit comes a month after Ryanair's chief operating officer Peter Bellow joined rival EasyJet. I bet that didn't go down very well, after a court case that found his 12-month non-compete clause was unenforceable. Oh dear. So sad news, really. I think
being a user of Ryanair now for a number of years.
Yes,
well over 10, probably 10 years plus now that we've been using Ryanair. It's definitely, the website definitely improved.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
From, if you go back, say 7 or 8 years ago, when the website was wanting in certain areas.
Okay,
right. It is a very easy website to use. But one of the things you do notice, and Matt will know why this particular thing does. But if you go and look for a flight on the website, and then come off and go back a few hours later,
it's gone up. Yeah,
it's gone up in price.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, a lot of that is to do with analytics. Basically, they're monitoring the amount of. Basically, they're monitoring how many people are looking for certain flights. If demand goes over a certain number, then the price goes up. I mean, but then they're not silly, are they? They know what they're doing.
But 6 years though, it's not long to stay with an airline. Really?
I don't know. In that sort of job, in the position that he was in,
he probably
6
got to
years
as far as he
is
could.
quite a long time. Well, because usually people, I may be speaking slightly out of turn here, but I mean, usually people like Kenny Jacobs come in to do a specific task. So if they have got problems with customer service, for example, he'll be brought in to basically, he's what best way to describe him is one of these fixers. He goes into a company, fix what's wrong, and then moves on. and there's a lot of people that sort of do that. Really,
I wonder whether he'll keep his friends and family discount.
I don't know. I mean, he got a pleasant statement out of O'Leary, so I wouldn't say he's leaving under a cloud for a change. But have you actually been spared, or have you actually been on a Ryanair flight, Armando?
Oh, no, I used to use Ryanair quite a bit when I lived over there.
Yeah, I think we all do. I mean, I've said it loads of times, haven't I? They're the buses of the skies at the end of the day. You get what you pay for.
Exactly. Exactly.
But anyway, on to slightly more pleasant things now, Armando.
This story
number 3
suits
is with
Armando.
Absolutely, especially what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
I still feel quite sick. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I'm going to continue the schmoopy whoopy theme because if you guys remember, last year we talked about how Megan and I actually met on an airplane. Specifically, American Airlines Flight 5774 from Lubbock to Dallas-Fort Worth, which I still remember like it was yesterday. But this story is from the folks over at Travel Pulse, and it is on Valentine's Day. Today, if you happen to be listening live, your first drink is on Southwest Airlines. So whether you're traveling with a significant other or not, the airline, whose whole existence is based around its stock exchange ticker symbol, LUV or love, wants to celebrate Valentine's Day with you. Southwest Airline passengers will enjoy a free Valentine's Day drink during their flight on Friday to celebrate the holiday. That includes alcoholic drinks for those 21 and over, and you have to prove it, ordering off its winter beverage menu. They say since Dallas Love Field was the carrier's first departure city, and the airline had an innate heartfelt affection for its customers, the love theme was quick to catch on. Southwest immediately requested love as its New York Stock Exchange ticker symbol and forever changed the airline's spelling of the word love. It's not the first time that Southwest has given out freebies to its passengers. It has done so also on Valentine's Day previously and on Halloween. Our heart is all yours, said the airline on its menu. So this is one free drink. Enjoy one round on us this Valentine's Day. And the folks over at Travel Pulse remind them that also coming up are President's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Flag Day, 4th of July, Arbor Day, National Mountain Climbing Day, National Tailgating Day, Cheese Pizza Day, World Teachers Day, all of which are prime opportunities to give freebies to their passengers.
Well, quite. Yeah.
And Matt is going to fly over to the US and bring out a new day, which is going to be called Cheese Day.
My favourite thing in the whole world. Do you know, as I say, that's the best thing about looking after Carlos's house is because Gemma always buys me lots of cheese to enjoy. Yes. Cheese
That's
and
good to
crackers.
know.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right, PTUK fans, now you know what to get Matt for Christmas and every other
Cheese.
holiday.
Yeah, it is shameless. I know. I can't deny it.
There'll be vast quantities.
If the doctor told me that you've got to stop eating cheese or you're going to be ill for the rest of your life, I will be ill for the rest of my life. There's no. I mean, if I was to ever become lactose intolerant, I would have to find a way around it. There's no two ways about it.
Tanya agrees with in the chat room. Tanya W says, "Yay, Cheese Day!"
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the future.
We're going to have a Cheese Day.
I think it's the future. Yeah, I think we should invent one.
We'll have to pick a date.
Okay, all right. I mean, my birthday works for me.
Perhaps the next PTK meetup in the UK will be Cheese Day.
Will be officially be Cheese Day. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anyway, shall we move on
to the next story, which is this one?
Masha says it's Cheese Day every day here.
Oh, okay. Fair. I'm just going to say, as long as it's not that horrible blue cheese.
That's the best cheese. Oh, something wrong with you. Move on. Come on. Next story. I'm cross with you now.
Next story is on. It stinks as well. Next story is on skynews.com.
Ah, yes.
And for those of you who would love to open up a door on an aircraft, probably not a good idea, and you won't get very far anyway.
Yeah.
So Chloe Haynes jailed after attempting to open aircraft door midway through a Stansted flight. Judging by the picture on here, I can see why she wanted to jump out. But anyway, a woman who yelled, "I'm going to kill you all," and tried to open the door of an aircraft midway through a flight has been jailed for 2 years. Chloe Haynes, 26, was handed the prison sentence at Chelmsford Crown Court on Wednesday this week, following an incident on board a flight from Stansted Airport on the 22nd of June last year. 2 Royal Air Force fighter jets were scrambled to meet the Jet 2 flight, which was heading to Dalaman in Turkey, and escort it back to the Essex airport. Haynes, whose passengers and cabin crew had fought to restrain, was arrested by police when the aircraft landed. A court later heard how she blacked out and really didn't remember what had happened on the flight after mixing alcohol with medication. Haynes of High Wycombe had previously admitted to hearing in December to endangering the safety of an aircraft and assaulting cabin crew members. Charlie Coombe, it says here. Mrs. Coombe suffered scratches as she tried to prevent Haynes from opening the aircraft door. So 2 years. You're 26 years old. You're going to jail for 2 years. Not really good. But then, when you're mixing alcohol with...
remind me, what was the figure again that they said that Jet 2 said it cost them? Was it £86,000? Something like that.
It's quite a few
Armando, you may be able to answer this question for me. I don't really know. It's like, so in this case, because obviously there were 2 RAF jets that were scrambled to go out and, for want of a better word, rescue... You're right there. So sounded like something just exploded where you are.
Well, let's hope not.
No, indeed. That's not even funny. I'll stop laughing. But no, so the scrambling of a couple of jets, obviously. Now they said that it cost them £86,000. Would they have been made to? Would Jet 2 have been made to pay for the fact that 2 RAF jets have been scrambled?
No, it's highly unlikely that the government would charge per se for that. One, we sort of need it.
Yeah,
we need it for validation of our operations and our tactics. If you have a real world response as opposed to a training response, it just adds another level of imperative to it. So it's always good. I doubt the RAF or any Air Force would charge for anything like that.
Okay.
And then as far as the £86,000, unfortunately, that's just kind of part of the business. So a medical emergency completely out of somebody's hands could easily cost an airline $100,000.
Right.
For example, I was on Norwegian flying from Gatwick to Oakland, California. We had a medical emergency over Calgary. So the aircraft had to do a quick descent, a rapid descent down. This man was having a very, very serious medical condition situation where, of course, there was doctors on board. We always say that. And the doctors had told the cabin crew, we got to get down. He's not, we can't do anything with the stuff that we have here. And, we landed very quickly at the Calgary airport where there is no Norwegian presence. I was on a Dreamliner on a 787. And the ground handling is probably going to cost them. The fuel's going to cost them. The government will probably get some kind of landing fee out of that. So it could easily cost. And that is a daily occurrence, probably multiple times a day for each airline. So it's just kind of part of the business. Now, I do agree with recouping costs from the passengers.
Yeah. Do we think that's the thing is I don't know. Are they going to make her pay £86,000 for that? Or will they be made? Will she be made to just pay a percentage of it, perhaps?
Well, I think that's my opinion. That's where you leave it up to the courts. That they'll evaluate her means of living and her way of life, and to say, hey, we think for you an appropriate penance is such and such number.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 years in jail. I presume. When we were talking about this last night in our production meeting, there was, one of the things that I was sort of spitballing is I felt like I don't know. I don't remember somebody doing jail time before for something like this.
Normally fines. Yeah.
Yeah, it's normally fines. This was obviously a very serious case, and I remember covering it when it first came, when it sort of happened, a few months back. But it was There's lots of things that really worry me about that story. I mean, although, to be fair, Micah has said in the chat room here she was a crazy person that needed to be subdued and put in flex cuffs, which is not a stupid idea. He's saying although the woman was crazy, there was probably no reason to scramble a jet. There was no way she was going to open the door at altitude. The air pressure wouldn't allow for it, Micah is saying.
Sure, exactly. And we've talked about that before. I think a couple times a year somebody tries to open a door, but and then you sort of had to take that into effect too. Did the person have all of their facilities? Did they, was it a combination of medication? Were they a mentally ill person? Were they, what led to the circumstances? Because surely you can't prosecute someone who in a court is proven to not have had control, at that moment or something. But that's literally my opinion is you have to leave it to the court to figure out.
Yeah, I guess the trouble is I'm being too cynical in my old age. I am 43 now. There is this thing where I'm sort of thinking, she's saying she completely blacked out. It just sounds like a really convenient excuse that's been given to the courts. But then I wasn't there. I wasn't obviously present at the court hearing, so obviously I'm just saying stuff out loud. So I probably shouldn't. But I mean, do you think? I mean, as I say, I don't recall jail time being given out before. I mean, do you think this is a sufficient deterrent for other people to sort of discourage them from doing it, or do you think it'll make no difference? I mean, do you think they'll just sort of do it anyway?
I think jail time is more of a deterrent than money, because someone probably hasn't got £80,000 or £90,000 or £100,000 lying around, so they're never going to pay that money.
No,
but to put them in jail is, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, we'll move on to the next story.
I love this next story.
Yeah, okay.
This is really good.
Well, I do and I don't, because actually it's quite sad news, isn't it, really? So this is on the pestmedia.com website, and I think this is sad news.
But the pictures are awesome.
Yeah, the final Airbus A380 wing has left Broughton in Wales, heading for the aircraft manufacturer's site in Toulouse for the final assembly. So Airbus is winding down its production of the jumbo jet, which is the world's largest passenger plane, following its decision last year to stop producing it by 2021. The main reason for halting production is the low number of planes sold. Airbus's head of business and analysts and market forecast Bob Lange commented, in the end, you have to face facts, and we could see that we were building the A380s faster than people were ordering them. The existing A380 facilities in Toulouse will be converted into A321 bases to increase production capability and accommodate a digitalised final assembly line. Airbus designs and manufactures the wings for its civil aviation craft at two sites in the UK, employing 13,500 people. The aircraft manufacturer also employs around 110,000 people in its UK supply chain. Filton in South Gloucestershire is where the engineering and design work takes place, and a site in Broughton, South Wales, is where all wing assemblies take place and other major wing components in manufacturing. So Airbus Chief Executive, I'm not even going to try that anyway, the Airbus... I'm not even going to give that a go. Sorry. Anyway, they recently said there was a lot of hope Boris Johnson's new Brexit withdrawal agreement will be the foundation of a healthy EU relationship. Mr. Fowrie said there's a lot of work to be done, but there's a lot of hope that based on the withdrawal agreement, there will be a healthy relationship between the UK and the EU, and we are trying to play a role in explaining what is necessary. Britain left the EU and
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I said that word, didn't I? Yeah, but I mean, I think this is a sad story because
it is a sad story.
I don't know. It's an airline, it's an aircraft that should have been made sort of 30 years ago, and I think we'd be talking about it with the same love and affection that we do the 747. There we are.
I love the attention to detail because this wing's been shipped out. There's a picture here with it on this low loader carrier, but it's all shrink wrapped, really well shrink. And then on the end of the shrink wrap, it's actually got their final A380 wing. Yeah. We made it fly, and then the Airbus logo, which I think is really quite nice.
Yeah, really nice touch actually. How do you feel about this one, Armando?
I just love the pictures in the article. I could watch a wing go by all day long.
Absolutely. Again, we were researching it last night actually, and I was intrigued to know how it went from Broughton. So it basically goes by like roads to the river like up to like the port. Then it goes over in because I didn't know, me being special. I was sort of saying perhaps it was flown over in the Beluga, but of course they're just not long enough, are they? I suppose, but a
lot of components are flown over.
Yeah, I know, and that was the other thing I was wondering is like where in the UK do they land? So when the Beluga comes to drop bits and pieces off, where do they?
Oh, I did know where that was.
That's a great chat room question.
Yes, okay. Somebody in the chat room will answer it.
That's why we have a chat room.
We do, yeah, absolutely. Somebody will know the answer to that.
But no, great pictures on that story.
They are, absolutely.
They're massive, aren't they? Those wings.
I know.
It's reminiscent of the space shuttle. How they carry the space shuttle from its hangar out to the launch pad. I mean. Wow.
I have to say,
and when we talked about manufacturing processes with
Airbus
the
Chester
VP of Airbus.
and Filton, apparently.
Oh, Filton, that's it.
Yeah, so Filton, Harwarden, is it? Harwarden, Filton, and Airbus Chester. No, it's not Hogwarts. That's where helicopters are made. We've discussed this before. No, they're great. Actually, while we're talking about pictures, if you don't mind, this lovely picture that we have on our backdrop behind us tonight, this was actually sent to us by Owen as he was then flying out over to Bucharest. But that's actually a view from Dubai as he was flying out.
I've been there.
Have you? Right? Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. So yes, so that's what's behind Carlos and me tonight, actually, which is lovely. Anyway, moving on. The next story I think is with you, Armando.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to do my best to slow down this story because it's got a lot of factors to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So from Flight Global, this is regarding the Emirates 777 that had a mishap. So investigators have disclosed that an Emirates Boeing 777-300 captain perceived the aircraft had encountered a thermal updraft and would not be able to land in the touchdown zone at Dubai before an ill-fated go-around attempt resulted in the jets crashing on the runway. When it had already explained why the go-around had failed, the United Arab Emirates General Civil Aviation Authority has given a detailed insight into the decision-making, which resulted in the 777 crews opting to abort the 3 August 2016 landing. They state that the aircraft had been conducting a stable approach to runway 12 left in a tailwind, but that early in the flare, around 40 feet, the captain believed a thermal updraft from the hot pavement was obstructing the descent or making them float down the runway. So it caused this long flare, and the aircraft was just rolling down the runway. The investigators revealed that the captain remarked these thermals. He actually announced it about 840 meters past the threshold, beyond the touchdown zone, which is located between 305 meters and 610 meters. So both pilots perceived the thermal effects. The inquiry points out that neither had actually noticed a shift in a wind direction as they were approaching that threshold. So the tailwind had diminished and swung around to be a headwind just before the touchdown, increasing the aircraft speed. 12 minutes prior to the 777's arrival, a Boeing 737 crew had reported light to medium wind shear on short final to 12 left. And an aircraft immediately following that 737, an A321, was informed by tower controllers about the wind shear report. And the 4 subsequent arrivals, a 777, all Emirates 777s were not advised of these wind shear reports. After that initial 737 report, the next arrival, an A320 and another 777, they executed go-arounds based on those wind shear warnings. So I'll stop there. So they issued a couple warnings, and then they just stopped right when the mishap aircraft, while there was still wind shear. So Emirates' own policy requires pilots to consider, keyword, go around if landing cannot be achieved within the touchdown zone. So the airline says the captain's decision to go around was consistent with the airline policy. However, there was a problem. The aircraft had some warning systems, but it actually ended up touching down, and the aircraft touched down for long enough, like 6 seconds, to disable the go around function. So on most of these aircraft, there's just a go around button, and that will sequence the navigation as well as operate the auto throttles into a go around power setting. So the aircraft had touched down long enough that was disabled. So when they hit the go around button, the navigation went up, but the power did not. And they did not physically move the power levers up. So when they pulled back on the controls, they thought they had full power. So the airplane lifted off for a little bit, the gears started to retract in compliance with all the go-around procedures, but they actually had no power.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the aircraft, sort of came to a rest and slid to the end. I don't believe anybody was killed in this. I think there was a few injuries.
I think one of the firefighters. I think it was a firefighter.
That's right.
Killed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this is just a procedural failure on a couple different aspects. You had the tower. It would be interesting to see the final report as to why the tower stopped issuing those warnings, why the crew didn't follow the proper go-around procedure and physically verify that go-around power was set. So, I mean, another sort of preventable accident, but just the error chain happened. And, a couple of things lining up resulted in a mishap.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I had a good chat with one of our mutual friends, flies on the 777 quite a lot. And one of the things that was interesting, they're looking at from a cabin crew point of view, was saying, sort of passengers, how do you get them not to stand up? It comments about passengers standing up inhibiting the cabin crew's jobs, cabin crews not getting to where they needed to be because of passengers standing up. The very people that will save you in an emergency have to be able to do their job. Worth mentioning, though, that everybody was evacuated safely despite the fact that there were several slides covering half the exits due to wind lifting the slides up. And interestingly enough, this crash is now used in several airlines in training when it comes to talking about good actions from cabin crew. So I suppose, you're saying one of the firefighters lost his life, but the people on the plane actually, everybody was safely evacuated. So yeah, interesting really. It's it's taken a while for this one to come out, because this was back in 2016, wasn't it?
It's a few years ago.
Yeah, that's about right for a final report.
Yeah.
Just recently, the Atlas air crash last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that took a full year for that report to come out.
Okay.
And even then, there's probably still more data, but a year to 2 years for a final is about right. If you really want to do a diligent investigation.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next story then. Carlos, this one is with you, and I feel like this has been on the cards for quite a long time.
Yeah, we're struggling airlines in Italy. Alitalia has obviously had its share of issues over the last few years. And this story comes on gatechecked.com. The headline, Air Italy to be liquidated, suspending operations after February the 25th. Air Italy It's one of those airlines that's got quite a nice. I do like the livery on there.
Yeah,
I
it's
do
very
like that.
sort of jazzy, isn't
Yes,
it? Yeah.
the rumour mill was abuzz early this week with talks of Air Italy being on the verge of bankruptcy. The airline shareholders, Al Zidar and Qatar Airways, through AQA Holdings SPA, held a meeting to determine the way forward, given the company's dire liquidity issues. The board has since reached a decision to enter liquidation in bonis, or voluntary liquidation, and will discontinue flights after February the 25th this year. The company will pay off all its respective creditors and employees during the winding down stages. According to the press release this week, the airline will continue operating from now until the 25th of February and will try to accommodate affected passengers as best as possible during that time. Those who cannot be reaccommodated in the next few weeks will be fully refunded. It says here that please see the following press releases that they released on this site for more info. So from 11th of February to the 25th of February 2020, inclusive, all Air Italy flights will be operated by other carriers at the times, and on those days previously scheduled, all passengers who are booked on flights outward or return after the 25th of February will be protected or fully refunded. All scheduled flights outward upon return and up to including the 25th of February, including the first departures on the morning of the 26th of February 2020 of domestic flights to Malpensa from Mal and Dakar airports, will be regularly operated without any changes to the original scheduled dates and times on their same flight conditions. Passengers will be able to fly using their tickets. Alternatively, passengers can also opt for a full ticket refund by emailing the address on this site. That's refunds@airitaly.com. Or contacting their travel agency prior to their flight's departure time. All tickets scheduled to depart after the 25th of February this year and to return on the 25th of February 2020, the outward journeys that are going to be regularly operated without any changes to the original scheduled dates and times and the flight conditions with regards to the flights and return flights, and the passengers are going to be offered the travel options on those particular flights. So there are the flight numbers on here and the phone numbers and stuff if anyone is listening who may have a flight book.
Yeah, they'll be in the show notes, so you
on
can
there.
read
They'll be
the
in the
story
show notes
in its entirety.
which is a shame. Since the acquisition on the 28th of September 2017, a minority stake in Air Italy, Qatar Airways has strongly believed in the company and its potential, supporting management's proposed business plans with a view to improving Air Italy's growth and job creation with the addition of long-haul routes and the numerous flight service improvements in line with Qatar Airways' global renowned high standards. But despite the minority shareholders' role, Qatar Airways continues to provide all possible supports to Air Italy right from the beginning, from releasing aircraft from the fleet and ordering new aircraft for Air Italy to back management choices and injecting capital and investment as required and permitted. It's obviously this didn't work. It's been on the cards for a while, I think now. It's a shame that these airlines do struggle, and it just seems to be,
Well, I mean, you've
in and around Europe, you have these
Yeah.
airlines such as Air Italy and obviously Alitalia, as you said, has struggled.
Flybe is still going because of sort of help from the UK government, really, which I know has put a lot of companies' noses out of joint, really, and I can understand why. To be fair, also I think it's worth just mentioning also this week, Turkey's Atlas Global air carrier is bankrupt and has stopped operations also this week. Although what's interesting about this one is that they're basically operating until the 25th. So it's unlike where we've had collapses here in the UK.
And they just finish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there's this massive repatriation sort of program that has to kick in to get everyone home. At least this way, there's sort of almost like a plan in place to sort of cover everything. I guess
it's sad. I mean, there's two things. One is obviously the staff, the pilots, the crews.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's really bad and sad for those guys and girls because they're obviously going to be out of work. Hopefully, they'll all get jobs within other airlines. And stuff. But also for the people who have booked flights and stuff on these, the passengers. And let's not forget, that's why we have things called credit cards and holiday insurances because to cover for
just such
instances like this.
Absolutely.
So 9 times out of 10 you're not going to lose your money. when things like this happen.
No, we live in hope, yes. Anyway, we'll move on to the next story. This is on a Business Report, and Virgin Atlantic renews Cape Town to Heathrow flight after 6-year absence. So the story's coming out of Johannesburg. Richard Branson's Virgin Atlantic on Wednesday announced the renewal of daily seasonal services between London Heathrow and Cape Town. It said the service, which would operate on a Boeing 787-9 aircraft, would start on the 25th of October, in addition to Virgin Atlantic's existing daily service to Johannesburg. This marks Virgin's return to Cape Town since after its long-standing route was cut in 2014. The Chief Commercial Officer, Mr. Javian, at Virgin Atlantic, said that on Virgin Atlantic's website, 2020 is an extremely exciting year of continued growth for Virgin Atlantic. Not only are we launching a new service to Sao Paulo in March, but we're delighted to announce a new seasonal service to Cape Town. He said Virgin was expecting a high proportion of leisure travellers on this route, taking advantage of the winter sun with the safaris and, of course, the world-famous wine region. Virgin Atlantic said that the new services would be on sale from the 18th of February. Return economy fares started from £713 per person. Virgin will be competing with Qatar, KLM, British Airways, SAA, amongst others. The announcement comes at a time local state-owned carrier SAA is in business rescue and culling loss-making routes. So the VS 478 will operate a night flight departing Heathrow at 16:20, arriving into Cape Town at 05:55, whereas inbound VS 479 will depart at 0800 hours, landing later that day at 1800, as in 6 o'clock. Return economy fares start from £713 per person. So come on, so this route is being fired up again. Is there a route that's been cancelled that you would let's go to Armando first? Is there a route that's been cancelled that you know of that you would love to see being reinstated?
Oh, that's a tough one. I suppose not off the top of my head. Yeah, unfortunately.
I've got one for me, actually. One of the few things that I used to use Ryanair for on quite a regular basis was flying into Derry, and because they stopped the service into Derry sort of several years back now. But it's not very far. It's the nearest airport to where my auntie lives in County Tyrone. So I was quite sort of gutted when they cancelled that. But what about you, Carlos? Is there a route that you wish they'd reinstate?
Off the top of my head, looking at all the destinations that I've flown in my years, you can pretty much get to all the destinations that I've ever been to. There's nothing that's really stopped, I think, per se. I think it would... One of the routes I think would be nice to have back being, a lover of Malta would be for Air Malta to fly back to Norwich airport again.
Okay.
Because obviously they used to fly.
I don't think anybody can afford that. That's the problem.
That is the problem, yeah. They used to fly from Norwich to Malta, but they stopped.
Richard Adams suggesting Beccles to Malta would make you very happy.
Or London Beccles.
London
Beccles, yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. But just looking on Virgin's website, actually, to look at these flights, and there's actually no available flights on the 20th. The flights start, according to the Virgin website, from the 25th of October. You can book a flight to Cape Town in South Africa, but on the 25th, there's no seats available.
Right. Okay.
They must have sold out.
Mind you, I think again, I say, because this comes as a bit of a shock to everyone. We do actually fact check these stories before we put them in the show notes. I know that's a shock to everyone. And one of the things we were looking at before, and they were very popular flights when they were there before. And it was a bit like one of those where nobody really understood why the flights had been cancelled in the first place, because they were very popular routes, and people were always, the planes were rarely, low in numbers, but I don't know whether. I was spitballing sort of possible sort of political reasons, maybe. I don't know, but who knows?
So the next story, Armando, for you is regarding an airline that I absolutely love. This colour.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, they're very pretty, aren't they? So JetBlue founder David Neeleman launched his 5th startup airline on Friday and announced that the new carrier would be called Breeze. The airline, which was previously codenamed Moxie, and I think we did a story on that last year, has just submitted its application for an airline operating certificate with the FAA and the U.S. Department of Transportation. The airline has been under discussion for several years as Neilman worked to order aircraft and finalize plans. After JetBlue, Neilman, who was born in Brazil and raised in Utah, returned to Brazil, where he launched the low-cost airline Azul. Azul entered the Brazilian market by launching routes between dozens of small and mid-sized cities that previously did not have direct flights from Brazil's larger airlines. He says it has really transformed Brazil in ways I could have never imagined. A lot of cities we fly to, it's either you go on us or you take a 4-day boat ride out there. There were operational challenges. The strategy paid off. Azul, which has a market capitalization of more than 2.8 billion US dollars, has no competition on 70% of its routes.
Oh, wow.
And it is dominant on 89% of its routes, Neilman said in a previous interview. So with Breeze, Neilman plans to follow essentially the same strategy as Azul, and he's going to launch point-to-point flights in markets that bigger airlines have either overlooked or didn't consider to be worth the effort. So the opportunity, according to Neilman, the opportunity exists because as costs increase for airlines, they have a tendency to retrench their network and focus on their hubs and operate larger airplanes. They leave behind smaller, less traffic destinations, creating an opportunity for us. We think there's a market where you can go with a smaller plane with a lower trip cost and service these cities that have been forgotten or neglected. I would be very surprised if a single Moxie route had nonstop service competition. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of city pairs that are crying out for nonstop flights. The best part of the story, the airline has ordered 60 brand new Airbus A220-300 aircraft. So that is a longer version of the A220-100s that have been highly successful for Delta, and Air Canada recently began flying the A220-300. Breeze also plans to lease 30 Embraer E195 jets from Azul. A little cross-pollination there. Deliveries of which will begin in May 2020. The A220s are expected to start arriving in 2021. Article kind of goes on a little bit with some more of his quotes, but so this gentleman made JetBlue an incredibly successful airline, and I have to believe in this model because the airline that I fly for, this is exactly what we do.
Right.
We establish routes to underserviced cities, and there are both local and federal government subsidies to aid in stimulating the economies of those cities. So there are regular, call it justification packages that are submitted to the Department of Transportation. Then they make decisions on yes, we will subsidize, establish, and sort of put our stamp of approval on some of these routes. So I think it's a great model. You know, we could start. This could be the thing that some of these small towns need, just to be able to put up a billboard and say, "Hey, nonstop jet service to Salt Lake City."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
according to their page, I just looked at on here, they're not going to offer in-flight entertainment, obviously, but instead they're going to offer entertainment through a streamable service using the airline's app.
Right, yeah. Which I think, to be honest, is probably the way to go, especially with a lot of these low-cost carriers. I mean, never mind all this, though, but, I mean, who's going to write the email and pitch PT UK Airlines to Mr. Neilman? Who's going to do that? Yeah.
That blue!
You are a bit obsessed with that.
I love that colour. That fuselage blue is blooming awesome.
When that's expensive. White is a cheap color to paint airplanes. When you're talking about, you know, two different colors of blue and gray, that's an expensive paint job. So,
but I think one of the nice things about this though is because I I may be speaking out of turn here, and I apologise, but I can't help but feel, but airlines in general these days are a bit lazy when it comes to their paint jobs. Well, do you know what I
Not
mean?
all of them are.
No, but
Some of them have nice
No, but a
ones.
lot of them, they just literally basically paint the tail fin and then maybe put a few letters down the side, and don't sort of, very few people go to this level of like branding the airplane as theirs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it. I think this, Neilman knows what he's doing, and I think he's probably going to be successful. I have to address in the chat room. I think it was Tony S in the chat room, who's also wondering what this piece of artwork is behind me.
Yes. We'd all
Tony,
love to
we
know.
discussed it, and we don't know.
No, indeed. I mean, it's sort of beautiful and horrendous all at the same time.
It's like when you throw something plastic into a fire and it goes.
Right. Okay. And then they just put it. And then they put it on a pink.
We're laughing,
Yeah.
right? But that's probably about $400,000 worth of.
Yeah, right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, now that I spend a lot of time in airports, I do appreciate art in airports or exhibitions. I know I was in O'Hare.
Right.
I was in O'Hare with Megan, and they had a whole section for the history of O'Hare Airport. So I know Denver's got some artwork. Pittsburgh's got some artwork. Apparently, Phoenix Terminal 4 has some interpretive art. So it is nice when you're just wandering around the airport to pontificate what exactly things like this are.
Yeah. Worth mentioning in the chat room here, welcome to Simon Vett.
Yes, Simon Vett. Hello to you, Simon.
And Dr. Steph has joined us as well, I see.
Dr. Steph!
Yes, absolutely. Does she know you're coming out to see them?
Yeah, Steph does,
right,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Good.
She's laying on the limousine when we get there.
Is she?
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Does she know that? Well, she does now.
She does now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next story. And this is one that I saw pop up on my Aviation Herald feed early this week, actually. Simon's great site. Great little website there for those of you who follow Aviation Herald. But this is on Simple Flying, this one, and headline: Icelandair's Boeing 757 landing gear collapses at Keflavik. So on the 7th of February, an Iceland Air Boeing 757-200 flying from Berlin Tegel, Germany to Keflavik, Iceland, had its right main landing gear collapse upon arrival at Keflavik International Airport. Passengers reported that the aircraft bounced as it landed. I bet it did. Then collapsed, and it's said to have occurred on the second touchdown. Was Pip flying that one? Or? At the time of landing, the wind was recorded to be 40 knots with gusts of 53 knots. According to a report by the Aviation Herald, the aircraft skidded on the engine and passengers reported seeing sparks and smoke coming from the engine. Thankfully, there were no injuries reported to the 166 people on board the aircraft. And the weather may have been a factor in the landing, as reports indicate, as we said, 40-knot winds with 53-knot gusts. According to Skyscanner, crosswinds in excess of 30 to 35 knots are generally prohibitive for takeoff and landings, while there is no limit for headwinds. However, for this incident itself, it is unknown what direction the winds were coming from. The 757-200 performing flight FI529 from Berlin to Keflavik had registration Tango Foxtrot India Alpha. Plane spotters indicate the aircraft is 19 and a half years old. That's quite young for a 757, and is powered by two Rolls-Royce engines. They'll probably be RB211s, I expect. Originally part of Iberia's fleet, the aircraft went to Icelandair in 2007, and since then it has been with the airline for the entire time, with the exception of a short period where it was leased to Ghana International Airlines. Probably the temperature difference will be different from there, going from Keflavik to Ghana. Blimey. According to Flight Rider 24, the aircraft was scheduled to fly next from Keflavik to Copenhagen the following day. All indications point to this flight continuing on as normal with another aircraft. This is the second landing gear collapse that they've reported, one within a span of a week. In fact, the nose gear of a WestJet de Havilland Dash 8Q400 collapsed while touching down at Terrace Northwest Regional Airport in British Columbia on February the 2nd. With the WestJet incident, strong winter weather may have been an impact on the landing. In December, a similar situation took place involving United Airlines 737-800 landing at Denver Airport, where its left landing gear collapsed, causing a shower of sparks to come from the bottom engine nacelle. The aircraft was attended to by emergency services, but again, no injuries were reported in relation to that incident. Now, Isolair, they operate quite a few of these 757.
Yeah. Actually, Tony says in the chat room here, he said that's really unusual because these 757s are built like a tank.
They are,
yeah,
and they go like a Porsche.
Yeah, I mean they just like trying to kill me when I'm on airplanes. It's just, no, okay.
It just goes. It shows though these 75s. You know, we jest and stuff, but they are blooming good workhorses. You know, this one was nearly 20 years old, and there's still 75s flying, now, 24, 25-year-old aircraft, airframes that are still flying. They were one of Boeing's sort of better success stories, I think, at the time. So.
Okay,
moving on.
Yeah, next story. This is on the express.co.uk, and we're back to Ryanair.
Good.
Ryanair luggage policy is deemed abusive by courts. Does this mean the end of excess fees? So Ryanair has been forced to financially reimburse a passenger for hand luggage charges after a Spanish court deemed the fees abusive. This is the second time in the last 6 months the budget airline has faced a legal dispute over its baggage fees. So what does this mean for charges? So the airline was forced to return the £40, that's €50 fee it charged a passenger, plus interest, which is interesting, when her hand luggage was deemed to be above the airline's baggage limits. The passenger had been travelling on a Liverpool to Alicante flight at the time. Judge Luis Forte said that he used Article 97 of Spain's Law of Air Navigation to make his decision. The court ruling states the transport provider will be obliged to transport free of charge in the cabin as hand luggage the objects and bags travellers carry with them, including items acquired in airport shops. Those objects and bags can only be turned away for safety reasons linked to the weight and size of the objects in relation to the characteristics of the plane. The judge also pointed out a September 2014 decision ruling by the Court of Justice stating excess charges for hand luggage were not justified in cases where passengers had not paid a priority boarding tariff. Ryanair fought against this case initially before being forced to return the passengers' money. The plaintiff, who was named by Costa Blanca newspaper in Información as Matilda Flora, I think, said the €50 is not a high sum of money, but if we multiply that cost by all the passengers who pay without having to do so, the amount would be extremely high. That's why I hope this ruling helps other travellers who have experienced the same thing as well as me. The news also comes just 5 months after a similar ruling in Madrid last October. A separate judge also deemed the fees to be abusive. However, the airline avoided having to pay to change its hand luggage policy by arguing the incident was an isolated case. Both events happened prior to Ryanair changing its hand luggage policy in 2018, which further reduced the amount passengers can take on board without having to pay a fee. Now, we all it's one of those, isn't it? We all love to hate Ryanair, don't we? But I mean, do you think they'll ever successfully bring a court case like that to the UK courts? Do you think?
Possibly. I mean, it could happen. I mean, there's similar things that have happened in the past here in the UK. I don't quite know how things go in the US in regards to this, but in the UK, I think it's not just Ryanair that have this kind of issue. There are times where other airlines, EasyJet being one of them, have had this problem in the past. I think even Jet2, I think at one point for a little while had a similar kind of thing. But
okay.
Yeah, I think in the US, Armando, I don't think this is such a big issue for you guys. I mean, you've got Southwest, obviously, but
yeah, no, I don't think, or at least it doesn't make it into the media very, very much. Yeah, I can't. I'm sure airlines go through lawsuits all the time, but I suppose I can't really recall, just a frequent argument over baggage policies. I think we're pretty liberal here in the US when it comes to baggage policies.
I mean, I suppose I guess they're just trying to, that's how they're making their money, I guess, isn't it? But I mean, one of the weirdest problems I had actually was where had I gone? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, was that the one we had the bag and they said it was...
where had I flown to? Oh, I'd gone to Italy.
That was Italy.
That was Italy, wasn't it?
And they said your
gone
bag
out to
was too
Aria,
big.
hadn't I, for my friend's wedding. And when I went out, the bag was fine and it passed. When I came home, there was somebody who basically was checking all the bags in the airport, and then they deemed that my bag wasn't suitable. Now I got round it by turning it up the other way round and shoving it in the holder, and then they had no room to think. But she was all about to go and get a tape measure and start measuring it. So
I'm surprised they didn't get the card machine out, the portable card machine.
Well, yeah, she probably did have one. Go on, Armando.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, the closest thing that we have anything is Spirit or Allegiant, and people are pretty used to it here. They know that they're just blatant about it when you're checking in, and it's just not I don't think it's an issue here in the U.S. as much. Yeah. I'm sure a couple times a day these gate agents will probably, get challenged on it.
Ching. Yeah.
When you see some of the cases that people try and get on board these aircraft,
I know.
And that, you just...
Well, which is all the more reason why I was so annoyed that they then came after me with my little bag.
Yeah, and there's someone next to you with something like this
something
big.
the size of a house. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Anyway, we could go on and on and on about this. We'll move on to the next story. Armando, this is a nice story, actually. A positive in what was a negative, because let's be honest, Storm Kira has been quite brutal here for us here in the UK.
Sierra?
No, it's Kira.
Kira.
It's Kira, absolutely.
We did at the production meeting, air quotes, we did get schooled on the proper pronunciation of
absolutely,
Winter
because it is
Storm
an
Kira.
Irish name, actually, because so the way it's spelled is Ciara, and I kept calling it Cara, didn't I, when we were doing...
When are they just going to have a storm called Bob?
Well, to be fair, the next one, the one that's
Dave?
the one that's about to hit us over the weekend, Carlos, is called Storm Dennis.
No, that's good. Dennis is good.
Right,
yeah?
okay.
I can relate to Dennis.
Okay, right, you can relate to Dennis.
Bob, Dave, Dennis,
right.
Storm, Bill.
Kira's a really lovely name.
It's just a bit...
Oh, come on. That's a really lovely name. Anyway, enough of this. On the subject of Storm Kira.
Storm Armando.
Storm Armando. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, no, I'm not a storm. I'm calm winds.
Yes.
So this winter storm Kira has helped British Airways get back into the history books. So just recently, the Boeing 747-436 operating from New York to London reached a speed of 825 miles per hour.
Good heavens.
As it was riding a jet stream wave. So the 4-hour and 56-minute flight arrived at Heathrow 80 minutes ahead of schedule on Sunday morning. That's right. According to Flight Radar 24, it beat the previous 5 hours 13 minutes held by Norwegian. So the pilot, this is a statement from the airline. So the pilot will have sat in the aircraft in the core of the jet stream, and at this time of year, it's quite strong. Turbulence in those jet streams can be quite severe, but you can often find it to be a smooth journey. The jet stream that day reached speeds of 260 miles per hour, according to BBC Weather. So despite traveling faster than the speed of sound, the plane would have not broken the sound barrier as it was helped along by fast-moving air. Relative to the air, the airplane was traveling slower than 801 miles per hour. So British Airways has said, we always prioritize safety over speed records. However, our highly trained pilots made the most of conditions to get customers back to London well ahead of time. The fastest transatlantic crossing belongs to the British Airways Concorde, which flew from New York to London in 2 hours, 52 minutes, 59 seconds in 1996.
So this is the first time that something like that's happened, which is subsonic, isn't it? That's the phrase that they keep
subsonic
using.
aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
Aircraft.
Yeah.
And again, we were looking at all the tweets and stuff. So this is the Flight Radar tweet that went out. So fastest across the Atlantic tonight from New York to London so far is the BA 112 at 4 hours 56 minutes. What was it? VS4. What's VS4?
Virgin, yeah. Virgin.
Oh, Virgin in
4
4 hours 57, and VS46 in 4 hours 59. I mean, it's just crazy. So if we're not not mistaken, BA now retakes the fastest subsonic New York to London crossing from Norwegian, which is, I mean, it's crazy, really, isn't it?
Our flights to Charlotte in June,
Right. Okay.
according to the BA website, are going to take us 7 hours.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, if you get lucky and have a jet stream going in the right direction, then it might be significantly less than that. Now, interesting, because I was really interested in this story, and I found this from LinkedIn, actually. So on Saturday night from VS4 to JFK, to London Heathrow took a record-breaking 4 hours 56 minutes. Whilst we were narrowly beaten by our main competitor by just 1 minute, the efficiency of our brand new engine A350 meant that we achieved the record using half the fuel of their 747. So interestingly enough, essentially what I like how they've gone for a bit of spin on this. So it's like, so yes, all right, whilst BA do have the record, we have 2 less engines than them.
Half
so
the fuel.
it's
Yeah.
like it's
Well
like
done, Virgin.
Yeah, it's like the moral high ground, isn't it? It's just like, yeah,
They're
good
more
work.
greener.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I should be playing
Yeah,
Jeff's
no.
We're Going Green. But there we go.
Now this winter storm, Kira, has also produced some awesome videos of airplanes trying to land over in Europe, and I've been killing some time watching those, and some amazing piloting, and then some not so amazing piloting.
Yeah, I suppose it brings out the best or worst in all pilots, I guess, when you have weather like this. But so that's a nice little thing to end on the commercial news.
Yes, it's always windy where Captain Al's involved.
Oh dear me!
Hey.
I see what you did there.
Storm Al.
Right.
Now that would be a good storm
Right,
name.
okay, yeah, but that would have, we're on to the D's now. So
No.
it's too
We
late.
need to contact the weather centre
Right,
and say
okay.
storm.
Maybe for next year.
Storm Captain Al should be
Right.
the next storm.
Well, as Micah pointed out in the chat room, it's actually not the weather centers that produce the names; it's the media.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. Just get it out there.
Oh no, hang on, no.
Storm the Sun?
No. It's in the UK. It's done by the Met Office. The names are decided by the Met Office, definitely.
Right, we need to email those guys.
One of my friends is works for a company called WeatherQuest based here in Norwich, and I actually asked him that very same question, and they were saying here in the UK essentially that the names are decided by the Met Office. But anyway, enough of this. Yeah,
I have feelings that people are going to get the emails coming now for storm names.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think that the next big storm
Should be called?
named? Yeah, I mean, Carlos has obviously put forward a very strong case for Al. Send them please to +44 757 22 49166. That's our WhatsApp number. You can send us a thing through the website planetalkinguk.com or our email podcast@planetalkinguk.com. There we go. Go on.
Oh, Armando's back.
Oh, yes, go on.
Well, I was going to say, you never know. You may actually get the show title published also if you send the right in.
Oh, good point.
Send the right name in.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, I'd PR. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah,
Good work.
good PR.
Work.
Well done.
Absolutely. Anyway, now it is time for my favourite part. It is time for part 7 of Nick's chat with Captain John Hutchinson. We start this week by learning about some of the perks of being a Concorde captain.
I can see that being a Concorde captain, you had access to luminaries from a wide circle, but being given access to a box in Carnegie Hall must have been a great benefit. What did you like seeing there?
Concerts.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think the most memorable one I went to was Otto Klemperer conducting Beethoven's Ninth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was pretty special.
But did you manage to get any other side benefits?
No, I mean, to me, I like music, and those classical musicians were a very special breed. In my view, they were all geniuses. They're on a totally different plane from the rest of us. They don't have to compete with anybody because they're above competition. And they were all, without exception, fascinated by the operation of an aeroplane. Oh. And of course we had open flight deck doors. I used to invite them up for come and watch takeoffs, come and watch landings. They'd sit up there during the cruise. I mean, it was a totally different world, wasn't it?
It was, indeed.
And a much more pleasurable world. And they were fascinated by it. And I mean, Vladimir Ashkenazi, for instance, I flew him many times. He was like a Roman emperor, this sort of aquiline face, fantastic looking chap. And I remember on one flight I did with him, he asked me for my address. And I gave him my address and thought no more about it. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, a jiffy bag arrives from Geneva, Switzerland, and it contained 2 long-playing records, one of him conducting, one of him playing, and on the record sleeves, you can tell how long ago it was, record sleeves, he'd written to John Hutchinson with many thanks for many memorable Concorde flights. And when I looked at the writing on the record sleeve, it was the same writing as on the jiffy bag. So he
parcelled them up himself.
Ashkenazi had parcelled these up himself and taken them down to Geneva post office and posted them to me.
Very nice. What a lovely man.
Which is pretty special.
Excellent, yeah. I read with great interest about your conversation with the BBC from Concorde as you flew over St Athens Air Show. Now, I was just curious on the technical aspects. How did you achieve that? Was it an HF foam patch or something similar?
No, it was VHF.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
So you had to speak quite quickly.
Yeah.
Because you were going to be out of range pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the story then. So, because this is how I actually basically got into working with the BBC. I'd been asked by British Airways a couple of days before the flight, would you mind doing a little piece for the BBC as I flew past St Athan? I said, yeah, sure, of course I will. And I thought, well, there's no point in going overhead at 28,000 feet because they won't see the aeroplane. So I had a word with the air traffic controllers and said, this is what I'd like to do. I'll climb up initially to 28,000 feet, and then as we're getting towards St Athan, I'd like to descend under radar control down to 6,000 feet. And if you can guide me over St Athan. So that's exactly what I did. This is a scheduled flight with passengers going to New York on business trips. And we go right over St Athan, and I call up, BBC St Athan, this is Speedbird Concorde 001, do you read? And it was Raymond Baxter on the other, and said, Speedbird 001, this is BBC St Athan, I read you loud and clear. Go ahead with your message. And I then did a spiel as we flew over St Athan along the lines that we owed the freedom of the skies that we enjoy today to those brave people who laid down their lives in the Battle of Britain. And I hope you all have a wonderful Battle of Britain air show. And now I must get on my way to New York and open the throttles up and zoomed away, and we carried on to New York. And when I got back, Sue said, there's a chap called Dougie Hesp who's been trying to get hold of you from the BBC. So I said, oh, really? What's his number? And she gave it to me. And I rang him up, and he said, you've got a great voice for broadcasting. He said, very distinctive. He said, I want you to come up here and we'll do some tests because we'd like to use you as a sort of, as a commentator for air shows. So I went up and did these tests and passed, and then I negotiated with British Airways, who were delighted because now they had a Concorde captain presenting programs for the BBC, so it was great sort of promotion for British Airways. So it was a sort of win-win situation. And I had a wonderful time with the BBC, going to all these different air shows, Mildenhall, Biggin Hill, Fairford, all sorts of things. And as a result of that, of course, I got one of my more memorable flights in my logbook, a flight in the Harrier.
Oh, marvellous. Yes.
So that was fun.
Who was the pilot?
It was a chap called...
I put you on the spot, I'm sorry.
You have.
Air Force chap or a test pilot?
No, he's an Air Force chap. Yeah. I can't remember his name. It's in my logbook.
Oh, I will.
It's in my logbook.
Yeah, we'll look for a posterity, perhaps. Excellent. Now, part of this was you jumping out of an airplane while doing commentary. I was a bit taken aback that you broke the golden rule of all right-minded pilots jumping out of a serviceable airplane, but what was it like?
Bloody stupid thing to do. What people do just to feature on television.
I gather it went very well, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you what, the instruction I had, it was at Weston-on-the-Green with the guys who train the special forces. You don't get better instruction than that. And they're checking you every inch of the way, constantly telling you things and then questioning you to make sure that you've taken aboard what it was they just told you. And having done all this sort of ground training, we then went up in this Islander up to 12,000 feet, I think it was. And I jumped out doing what's called accelerated freefall.
Oh, wow.
Where you jump out with a chap on each elbow. So I went out, there were 3 RAF jumpers, one with a camera and the other 2, one on each arm. And we go into the free fall position with them hanging onto my arms just to stabilize me. And at one stage I remember the guy with the camera was filming me. I could sort of looking at him straight on like this, and I started waving to the camera. I thought that'd be clever. And I promptly, of course, because I was no longer in the proper free fall position, I got myself completely unstable. And these 2 chaps had to grab me tight and get me locked back into the free fall
Aerodynamics,
position.
John, how could you have forgotten?
And at 4,000 feet, I then pulled the ripcord, and that was fantastic. It was a square parachute. It was an aerofoil, a rectangular parachute, I should say, rather than a mushroom-shaped parachute. And it's a glider. And I was completely at home.
I love
And
it.
the contrast between the dynamic experience of free fall and gliding along under this wing was quite dramatic, actually. And I was just in 7th heaven now. And I was doing sort of stalls and turns, and of course what you actually do is you come in downwind, base leg, final approach, and I landed
Excellent.
right on the edge of the landing spot, and they were all frightfully impressed. I said, well, I'm a pilot, I ought to be able to judge glide angles. It would have been pretty rum-do if I had missed the landing spot completely.
I know plenty of pilots that have missed. Brilliant. I see you started a company, Flying Concorde Charters, for car salesmen. I'm joking, of course, but these charters and others you mentioned sort of tells me that the aircraft's utilization rate for scheduled flights wasn't very high and that you were having to dream up new ways of using it. Was that really the beginning of the writing on the wall for the Concorde fleet?
That was the beginning of really getting the aeroplane accepted for charter flying. I mean, British Airways didn't want to charter the airplane at all.
Oh,
to
really?
start with. No. No, they thought it was all going to be far too complicated to do that. Let's just stick to our scheduled destinations and leave it at that. And it was people like me with this charter club, as we called it. A group of us had got together. A chap called Jock Lowe that I've already mentioned, Mick Burke, a flight engineer called Bill Brown, and myself did that. And then eventually this led the way to a company called Goodwood Travel coming on the scene, and they had the resources and the expertise to make a far better job of what we essentially did was to prove that charters could work.
Mm-hmm.
And British Airways now realised that charters could work, and that then enabled people like Goodwood Travel and others to come on the scene and do it on a much more professional basis than we were ever able to do. So that was I think the first Concorde charter ever was organised by a chap called Brian Calvert, who's a very eminent captain on Concorde, who had been one of the nucleus group of pilots that were seconded to British Aerospace before the airplane ever entered service.
Oh, wow.
And did their training with Brian Trubshaw and John Cochrane and people. And he organised a Concorde charter for his pub.
I love it.
At Allsworth in Berkshire.
Huh?
And that was the very first charter that was ever done, I think. And that sort of opened a crack in the door, which we sort of exploited, and eventually, the charter side of things became almost as important as the schedule side of things, because what it did was, well, various things. It enabled us, the taxpayer, to go on Concorde at an affordable price, and B, the publicity that it got going to all these different destinations was enormous positive publicity for British Airways. So it became a very, very successful part of the whole Concorde operation.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Something that I took from another interview I listened to, that of David Davis, the Air Registration Board test pilot.
Yep.
He said that the initial design for Concorde was, when the nose was up, the windshield would be covered by a solid metal visor. Now, he said that he and the Air Registration Board would have been happy to certify the aircraft in that design, but it was the American FAA that insisted on having glass that they could see through even when the nose was fully up. How would you have felt flying inside a metal box with steel shutters over the windshield?
No, I think David Davis was wrong in his thinking about that.
Okay.
I really do. And that clear glass, that visor that you could look through, did have value. I mean, I remember on one occasion we were flying to New York, and it was south of Gander somewhere, and I saw this white ball in the sky. I have to say that there was little I could have done about it, because by the time I'd sort of registered this white ball in the sky, the next thing was it was whizzing past off our right wing somewhere, about a mile away to the right-hand side. And it was a meteorological balloon.
Oh, wow.
With all of its box of tricks hanging underneath. I don't know what would have happened if it had been directly on course.
Well, they're supposed to be frangible, but when you're doing Mach 2...
Yeah, well, I don't know whether the shockwave would have blasted the thing out of the way. Might have done.
But you wouldn't really want one to go down engine, would you?
No, you would not. Absolutely not. So, I was able to see that. I would never even seen it if it had been a solid visor.
But it was a marvellous testament to the technology that they managed to eventually create glass that was capable of withstanding
It was
the temperatures and the pressures.
Fantastic
and the speed.
glass, yes. Absolutely. Made by Triplex, I believe.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, it did a good job.
So fascinating, and when you get the chance to, as we have, watch these after they've obviously finished doing all the editing and stuff, and you just sit there and you just totally shut. I mean, I literally shut off for the entire 15 20 minutes that each segment.
Well, we've been sat here in the studio for the last 14 minutes basically just glued to this. I mean, it is great. Tony's actually asked a question in the chat room. I hope they release it afterwards as a thing. So yeah, no, we are actually going to put it on YouTube. All of the I think it's 9 parts, isn't it, in total? So we've got a couple more still to come. But as I say, great work by Nev, and more importantly, I mean, great work by Nik as well. Those the questions are great. I know we say this at the end of every episode, but it's just so interesting, isn't it?
I know a lot of the comments that I've had from various friends and family who have had the chance to watch this is that, one of the nicest comments that I got personally was that someone said to me, "This is better than what I see on the BBC."
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, in fairness to people, to the mainstream broadcasters, because one of the advantages about doing a podcast is the fact that you're not restrained to times and limits. So you can, if you want to do a 2-hour show, you can do a 2-hour show. You're not, you haven't got 4.5 minutes to cram in an interview with John Hutchinson, which, as we know from this series, is impossible to do.
So if anyone's watching from the BBC and would like to get in touch with us have something excellent broadcast on your channel.
Okay. And on that bombshell, I think it's time to move on.
Oh, okay then. We'll move on. So it's time for us to hand the show over to our military expert on the panel. Of course, that's Armando. So over to you.
Hey guys, so we do have a couple military stories this week, and this first one is a great example of some airmanship on behalf of some C5 Galaxy's crews. This is from Business Insider, and it goes on to explain how the crew of a C5M Super Galaxy aircraft from the 9th Airlift Squadron and the 436th Aircraft Maintenance Squadron started on a mission January 13th, 2020, only to return to Dover 15 days later after encountering numerous challenges and an in-flight medical emergency along the way. So the air crew, which was 12 persons on board the C5, whose call sign was Reach 190, consisted of, I won't go into their names, but it's a good mix of pilots, loadmasters, crew chiefs. There was 12 people on board altogether, and they tackled an unscripted chain of events and challenges, which altered the length and itinerary of their extraordinary mission. Communication and coordination among the aircrew as anomalies arose was critical to the success of this mission. During the initial aircrew briefing prior to departing Dover, one of the aircrew members emphasized the importance of safety and communication. Really, the two things that I preach, this is from the aircraft commander, and harp on is the initial aircrew brief is communication and crew resource management. Those are the two biggest things about flying this airplane with 3 different crew positions: pilots, flight engineers, and loadmasters, all operating together in order to accomplish the same mission. So the first leg of this mission took them to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. They spent the first 4.5 days on the ground before making an unscheduled return to Dover to fix an inoperative weather radar, before continuing to their scheduled overseas location with 68 passengers and cargo. The weather radar was inoperative, which would have endangered the mission and the crew if the issue wasn't corrected. So a few minutes into their mission on January 18th, the Super Galaxy had departed Barksdale and was heading back to Dover, ascending through an altitude of 18,000 feet above sea level when they received a warning indication saying pressure door open. That lighted up in the multifunctional display units, requiring the aircrew to level off. It's a warning system, so we have to treat everything as a real problem. We suspected it was an indication problem only, but we had to follow the procedures. So sitting at the flight engineer's panel, the flight engineer determined the aircraft's cabin air pressure was stable as the crew initiated what we call the -1 checklist. So they continued at 10,000 feet. So shortly after initiating this checklist, an intercom call from the tube compartment notified the aircrew on the flight deck that one of the passengers was experiencing a seizure and had lost consciousness. So we had one of the passengers come up, leave their seat, come forward to let us know what was going on. With the help of others, they rendered aid to the stricken passenger while keeping the aircraft commander abreast of what was unfolding in the troop compartment. So he goes on to say that they took care of that passenger. They decided to divert to the closest airport, which is not easy with a C-5 Galaxy. Memphis International Airport in Tennessee was right in front of our flight path, wasn't too far away, and we were able to land in about 15 minutes. Air traffic control helped us out greatly by giving us immediate vectors to Memphis. So due to the weight of the aircraft, which is a staggering 770,000 pounds, and the need for medical support, the aircraft commander made the decision to declare an in-flight emergency and diverted into Memphis, which has an 11,000-foot runway. So he knew that it was a former C-5 base. And as a side note, Memphis is also a large hub for FedEx. So they're used to large aircraft coming in and out there. After the uneventful landing, the passenger was escorted off the aircraft, taken to a nearby medical facility. 2.5 hours later, they continued back to Dover for the previous required maintenance. And the aircraft commander says the character of our airmen, character of everyone on board that evening performed admirably, and I'm very proud of every single one of them. They continued on to do their overseas deployment with little issue. But why I put this story in there was, we often talk about aircraft mishaps and crew resource management and how air crew are generally really calm about handling multiple factors in an emergency. And this is a good example of how just when you think you have one thing figured out, another thing pops up. And it's that airmanship that you have to rely upon to prioritize what is the biggest threat to the mission at that moment and communicate that to the rest of the crew and have a very quick and efficient discussion amongst the crew to figure out how you're going to tackle each of these challenges. In the CRM courses, we used to call it the air crew cycle. You figure out what the issue is, how much time you have, what a plan to counter that issue, and then you brief it up and make sure everybody's on the same page. So just an example of another day-to-day military crew doing some fine work out there, and congratulations to them, and well done to them and every other military and commercial and business aviation crew out there that's remains calm and tackles these challenges. Love talking about success stories like this.
Plus, let's not forget the C-5 is not a small aircraft as well.
No, they're not small, and they're not new either. They're generally getting a little long in the tooth, so they're kind of maintenance heavy aircraft, and often you'll get multiple cautions and warnings and issues going on at the same time, not just in C-5, but I mean, we were talking a couple months ago about the KC-135 potentially being the first military aircraft to be in service for 100 years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it?
Actually, we had Armando, on a side note, last week we had a C-17 doing little soirees over Bungie here, where we are. Which a lot of frightened a lot of people. Yeah, there was some talk on Facebook of a large aircraft at low level over here. Yeah, and that was a C-17.
Yeah. So speaking of C-17s, we have the coronavirus that's going on right now. It's obviously in the media. Carlos, I gave you this story. It gets a little number heavy in some of these paragraphs, but I've seen photos recently of C-17s, KC-46s, 767s, and 747s going in and out of China, evacuating these passengers. So that's why I gave you this story, because it's always interesting to hear how they actually get these people out of there.
So this one's on the aviationist.com, headline Coronavirus. This is how air evacuation of patients under biosafety containment works. A few pictures on this one as well. But so the US Air Force, RAF and Italian Air Force are the only ones that have the ability to carry out biocontainment missions on board their aircraft. So over the course of the week, a Boeing KC-767A tanker and transport aircraft of the 14th Stormer Wing of the Aeronautica Militaire Italian Air Force will depart the Pratica di Mare Air Force Base near Rome to carry out the air evacuation of an Italian student stuck in Wuhan, China, who could not be repatriated along with others on February the 2nd, 2020, because he developed a fever. While the same aircraft has already been taken part in previous flights to the Chinese town, that is the coronavirus epicenter, the next one will be in biocontainment configuration. This kind of mission is flown with an aeromedical isolation crew that can take care of patients in isolated areas of the aircraft with bathrooms, because he or she has to be exposed to or infected with highly infectious, potential lethal pathogens. For this reason, aircraft involved in the task require specific disinfection and decontamination procedures after each mission. Considered are the peculiar health conditions of the patients. It's also important as well to make sure the quality of the flight is not affected by the so-called major and minor stresses of the flight. Major stresses are hypoxia, barometric pressure changes that can induce expansion of trapped gas, decompression and sickness. Minor stresses are dryness, nose, vibrations and turbulence, temperature changes and overall fatigue of flight. ATIS, or Air Transit Isolators, are boarded for these missions, and ATI is a self-contained isolation facility designed to transport safely a patient during air evacuation, protecting the healthcare personnel and crew and the aircraft from exposure to infectious agents. The ATI provides a microbiologically secure environmental layer, protection layer, multi-layer, around the rigid or semi-rigid frame, and a PVC envelope surrounds the patient while allowing observation and treatment of the patient in isolation, and an air supply unit puts the ATI unit under negative pressure with HEPA, I've heard of these before, HEPA filters, inlet and outlet filters that filter out 99.97% of particles and larger, preventing the passage of potentially infected microparticles. 4 12-volt batteries with an operating time of 6 hours each provide the ATI 24 hours independent time. The team is usually composed of a team leader, a doctor, who is responsible for coordinating the mission, manages relations with the civil air entities involved, and supervises all the operations. At least 2 medical officers, an anesthesiologist, and an infectious disease specialist are responsible for health management of the patient, while 6 non-commissioned officers take care of the patient and carry out transport procedures. Needless to say, all the teams wear protective gear that may vary according to the required biosafety level. That can range from a simple gown, facial mask and gloves up to the full bodysuit, Tychem C, with positive pressure gloves as well. And there's some various pictures what Matt's been putting up on the screen there, but you can see there's like a containment framework area that can be put together there with a kind of decontamination area, obviously to build on board the aircraft. And yeah, hats off to anyone who has to do this work, because it's obviously worrying if you are, a member of the crew. You've got the potential.
But then I noticed we were talking about this at work, believe it or not, and because with these projects there have been coaches obviously involved in moving people from one place to another. And I don't know how much you know about coaches, but one of the things that is required is that you have to have legal lettering. You don't have to have the vehicle sign written, but near the entrance door on the near side, in our case, you have to have legal lettering that says who owns the vehicle. And interestingly enough, the vehicles that have been involved in transporting people from place to place, like either for quarantine purposes or whatever, not only have the vehicle registration plates been taken off, but the vehicles are completely white, and the legal lettering has also been removed to protect the company that has been helping do the moving around. And then the driver then spends 2 weeks in quarantine along with everyone else. I'm delighted to say, certainly in our industry, on full pay.
That's good.
And but I thought that was an interesting thing, because I thought, because there are crazy people in this world who will say, well, I don't want my child to go on that bus because it was involved in transporting people to, to this quarantine. When in fact, obviously, it will have had, it will have been thoroughly cleaned, disinfected, and all that kind of thing off the back of something like that. The driver who was involved will have been, subject to the same quarantine as everyone else. But there are still people out there who just cannot see the bigger picture. And I don't think that's ever going to change, is it?
Armando? No, he's shaking his head.
No, he's shaking his head.
Now, the next story,
absolutely.
The next story you've got, Matt, which is yours. This is handy for anyone who may want to purchase some US Air Force military hardware.
Yeah, this is on Popular Mechanics, and the headline is, the Air Force could cut loose tons of older planes.
I'm going on eBay now.
Right, okay. You go and do that while I read this. The story goes on that the US Air Force is planning major cuts to its fleet of fighters and bombers, many of which are 3 decades old or older. The cuts are designed to divert funds away from keeping older, less capable planes in service while funding a new generation of fighters and bombers. Among those on the chopping block are the large numbers of F-15 Eagles and the B-1B bomber. The cuts, as far as foreign policy writes, are part of a process of modernising the Air Force's fleet of warplanes to deal with modern threats. The average age of Air Force aircraft, as a recent Heritage Foundation report pointed out, is 28 years. Retired aircraft will be replaced with new ones, though the plan has been considerably watered down since it was originally proposed months ago. The Air Force wants to retire all 215 F-15C air superiority fighters and F-15D trainer jets, according to the Air Force magazine's annual almanac. That's the entire F-15 fighter force tasked with the air combat mission. The service would retain 218 F-15E Strike Eagles, dual-role jets capable of both air-to-air and air-to-ground missions. In addition to being capable of both types of combat, the F-15E fleet is significantly younger than the F-15C/D fleet, with production running from the late 1980s to 2001. The Air Force also plans to buy at least 72 brand new F-15EXs, procuring the first 2 in this year's defence budget. The service also plans to retire a number of F-16C Block 25 fighters, many of which are over 30 years old. There are 787 F-16Cs on active and reserve duty. These jets will largely be replaced by the F-35A, though it's unclear if the Air Force plans to replace them on a one-to-one basis. The Air Force will also retire 17 B-1B bombers, dropping the total active duty force to 45 B-1Bs. The B-1 force is old, with the last bomber rolling off the production line 32 years ago. Spare parts are hard to find and airframes are fatigued, in large part to the bomber's role as a close air support aircraft over Afghanistan. Fast, heavily armed and with a long range, ground troops liked the B-1B for its ability to quickly respond to air support requests and then loiter over the battlefield, dropping bombs as and when needed. The B-1B bomber and the B-2 Spirit bomber are scheduled to be replaced by the B-21 Raider bomber starting in the late 2020s, and as foreign policy points out, this is simply an acceleration of the retirement schedule. It's also likely a compromise to keep the remaining bombers in service by cannibalising the retired jets for usable parts, so you won't find any of those on eBay, I'm afraid. The B-1B, like many of the Air Force's planes, has been out of production for so long the contractors that would otherwise supply spare parts are no longer in business or do not have the capability to produce them any longer. The 15 B-1Bs that are retired will probably be sent to Davis Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, home of the Boneyard, and stripped of parts as needed. Satellite imagery of the base shows 17 B-1Bs already at the Boneyard, many without wings and other parts. The Air Force wanted to retire other aircraft, including the MQ-9 Reaper unmanned aerial vehicle, the U-2 spy plane, and others, but Congress balked. Trading an F-16 for an F-35 is one thing, but retiring the MQ-9 would leave a hole in the service's capability set. The same goes for the RC-135 rivet joint and reconnaissance aircraft that currently has no planned replacement.
No, Armando, if you've got a spare $8.5 million at home somewhere.
Right.
Go on, Carlos. What can we get for 8.5 mil?
Right.
There is a fully functional, in Florida, this is up for sale in Florida.
Oh, right.
A fully
Okay.
functional F-16, which
then.
is a Block 20 midlife updated F-16. It's still got 8,000 hours left to fly on the books. It can fly for at least another 8,000 hours. $8.5 million will get you that.
Let's do it. I mean,
Yeah.
how's the Patreon fund doing?
I think it's a little shy of
We've
8.4
got
million or something.
8.5 quid.
Right, okay. Yeah.
What if we do it? What if we do it in Tanzanian rubles? Or
I'm not sure that
No.
helps.
Oh, dear.
My. Yes, okay.
That's not bad, 8.5. I mean, I wonder if it doesn't say here whether it comes fully fueled.
And whilst as we discussed earlier, you're not participating in any kind of Valentine's Day rituals, Carlos, other than the cards that I'll come back to in a moment. Is there like, Gemma is not going to allow you to put one of those in the garden?
Yeah, I wouldn't buy an F-16.
this one wouldn't sit in the garden. This one would be flying. So Gemma
well,
would be
exactly.
on board with it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine me rocking up at Seething or Ella with an F-16?
I think they'd wet themselves with glee. Frankly.
There'd be me flying in with this while the 150s and the 172s.
There's only one person I can ask this question to, Armando. Just how different is what is that? I think it's the F-16 fighter. How different is that to the Cessna 150 that he's flown?
Well, let's just say it would require a little bit of transition training.
Right. Okay. All right then. But just a couple of hours, right, and then he'll be right as rain. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if we can pick up an F-15,
Right.
the good-looking Captain Jeff could always just come give us some dual instruction, and
That is true.
we'd be all right.
That is true.
Yeah, Tony S has said that we need to get a two-seater version so Armando can take us on joyrides.
Quite right, absolutely. Yes, there is
Yeah.
no one else I would like more to be in charge of such a beast. If I was to ever be anywhere near the inside of one, certainly.
Seriously, that is for sale. That is for sale.
Right, okay, lovely.
yeah.
All right, then you better put a plea out for Patreon then. But
If you've got a spare $1 million laying
right,
around the back of the
okay,
sofa.
yeah. All right, it's time to come to some feedback then, if we may, Carlos.
Yes, we have had some amazing audio feedback sent in to us from
I do like
listener-
repeat offenders.
I
actually,
know,
yeah.
and Nick, if you may remember, we've had some feedback from Nik Codling before, and in this particular piece of audio feedback, Nick is talking about the BA and Virgin speed story. So, Matt, if you want to play that.
Hi guys, this is Nik Codling here from Devon, down near Exeter. Just wanted to give a bit of audio feedback for a story that I excitedly read yesterday about the beloved Queen of the Skies. I'm sure some of you might have seen the story about the British Airways flight being the fastest subsonic crossing of the Atlantic from New York to London, doing the journey in, I think it says here, 4 hours and 56 minutes, which beat the previous record, which was 5 hours and 13 minutes, and that was set by Norwegian, so presumably a 787. So I think that's a fantastic record and absolutely incredible. Obviously, we've had Storm Ciara. How are we pronouncing that? I'm not sure. Anyway, that's been causing all sorts of havoc all over the UK, lots of disruption. Some interesting plane spotting footage from Heathrow yesterday with some a few little touch and goes and some crossed up landings occurring. But obviously the knock-on benefit of that for people travelling transatlantic was the extra fast jet streams, which the pilots were able to take advantage of. Apparently they were in the region of 260 miles an hour, and the 747 reached a speed of 825, which is absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, there's the science bit about how it didn't break the sound barrier because it was the airspeed and not the ground speed, but I'm sure us experts don't need to go into all that nonsense. I did read on a separate article that apparently the record was briefly broken by a Virgin Atlantic A350. I'm not sure whether that's true. I don't know. I haven't read that anywhere else. But anyway, I'm sure that we would all quite like to see this one remain where it is. It's obviously quite sad that the 747s are all being retired now, and certainly an aircraft that I'm very fond of, and I know a lot of people are. Having as an 8-year-old written to a well-known children's television program where you would sometimes get your wishes granted. It was my wish to go on a 747, and I wrote to the program and even did a drawing of the aeroplane. Obviously a rather infamous program, and in hindsight, thankfully, I didn't get to go on the program, so maybe dodged a bullet there. But anyway, as a 9-year-old, myself and my family all travelled to the United States, where we went and lived for a time as part of my dad's job over there. And the highlight of that for me was obviously we got to travel on British Airways on a 747 on the upper deck, and myself and my brother also got invited into the cockpit, which was an absolutely phenomenal experience and one that I'll never forget. So long may the record continue, and let's hope that it stays with the 747. A little side note, congratulations to the BBC. You actually put the correct aircraft in the photograph accompanying the article, so well done for that. Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks a lot, guys, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thanks for sending in that feedback, Nick. That is very kind of you. We just heard that, and I actually listened to it earlier this week, so I was lucky because I always play the feedback that we get
absolutely
early on in the week, so I listen to it like as soon as it appears.
Of course. Yeah.
But don't forget, if you have any audio feedback, you can send it to our WhatsApp number as well.
You can indeed.
So you can record it using your mobile phone device and send it to our WhatsApp number, which is +44 757 22 49166.
Indeed. If you want to interact with us on social media, search social media for Plain Talking UK, all as one word. To send us an email, it's podcast@plaintalkinguk.com. The website, www.plaintalkinguk.com. You can buy some T-shirts from there.
You can.
You can also send us an email using a form on the website. Details about how you can watch the show are also on there. Why not subscribe to our YouTube channel? You can get notifications when we go live, and you can help shape the conversation of the show by joining us in the chat room. Go to www.youtube.com and search for Plain Talking UK. As I say, on our website we've also got the Amazon link, and also why not become a patron to the show? You can do that very, very easily by clicking on the link on the website. And while we are talking about Patreon, then I think it worth mentioning the marvellous people who have very kindly donated this month.
Yes, so we have got to say a very special thank you, as always, this month to everyone who has donated via Patreon and PayPal. So we're going to run through all of our family members who have very kindly helped us out again this month. So that's Adam Spink, Andrew Wilson, Captain Jeff, Chris Griggs, Eric Graves, Evan Shue, Graham Haley, Jacob Darlington, Jeff Ward, Jonathan Warner, Jordan Rose, Auntie Liz, Magnus Rudbeck, Marsha, Matt Caton, Megan Carrion, Myla, Owen as well. Mr. Owen has donated as well. And Neil Lamworn, Nicholas Hewitt, Nico Rieger, Philip Labe, Ray Williams, Ruben Wells, Ryan Harper, Shut Backer, Dr. Steph, Steve Andres, Stuart Black, Tanya Wyman, and we've also got some people who have very kindly sent some money through via PayPal as well, which you can
Links
do via
to
the
that
website.
are on the website as well.
So big thanks this month to Alan Loveday, who we met at the 300th.
Yeah.
So big thanks to Alan. Thanks
he
for
brought
your
his friend
very kind
Nigel, I
donation.
think, didn't
Yeah,
he? Yes,
he did. Mahazu Karim, thank you to you as well. Dave Willis, big thanks to you. We met Dave at the 300th as well. Richard Adams, big thanks to you, Richard. Jenny in Rome, thanks to you, Jenny. She's probably cooking her tea right now.
That's usually about now. It's tea time, isn't it?
And of course, someone else we met at the 300th, Tony S. Thanks
the legend
to
that
you
is
as well.
the king of all things grey.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So big thanks to everyone. Don't forget, we really, really do appreciate any donation through PayPal or Patreon. It does all help to do everything in this room and a lot more. We've got tons of stuff planned for this year, including air show visits and stuff, which that all goes through to help. And there's also a few leads. I think there's a few leads that might need to be
several
needed
wires are usually
that needed used. Yes, that Matt tends to chew them or eat them, so we have to replace them. And it all helps as well. Don't forget to pay for the libsyn and all the fees for the website things and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So big thanks to everyone.
Absolutely. That is where we're going to bring the show to a close, I'm afraid. Thank you very much to everyone who has joined us. The legend that is Armando, thank you so very much. Where are you off to this afternoon?
So today I'll be flying up into Sholo, Arizona, then over to Cortez, Colorado, Denver, and I'll end up in Nebraska somewhere. So it's pretty much bouncing up and over the Rockies for the next couple of days. And then I get a couple of days off after that. So
Fantastic. Lovely. Little bit of time with the family then after that, all being well.
Yeah, it's, I love the job, but I always miss them when I'm on the road.
Yeah, no, I bet. Yeah, and so for me, it is, it's half term this week, so not a lot going on for me this week. Lots of cleaning, getting everything ready for next week. What about you, Carlos? What have you got going on next week?
Just building up the excitement ready for June, because
What's happening in June? Anything?
Because I did today book our flights to go out to see Armando and Dr. Steph in June. So we're going to have a little visit out to stay with Armando and Steph in June. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Although the downside is, although Nev will be proud of me because I booked our flights with BA,
right. Yes.
we will be flying over on an American Airlines A330.
Oh dear. Right, okay, because they co-chair, do they? Is that why? Okay. Oh, well, never mind. It could be worse. Yeah, okay. Obviously, it's Valentine's Day today, as we mentioned. Carlos, now, I would like an explanation, please, of this, please. This
for those of
here.
you watching in the world of YouTube, this is the Valentine's card that I got today.
Right, now, is this one that you gave your wife, or did your wife give this to you?
I received this card from
Right,
my
so she's
wife.
officially as nasty as you then, essentially.
It's
for those who are listening on the audio podcast, how describe this image?
Well, it's an
a
image
cat on a litter tray.
Because I love cats.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I love cats, obviously. This particular card is a cat in a litter tray, producing a love heart.
Yes, I'll leave your imagination
in a
based on the
catty way.
Yes, based on the fact it's in the litter tray. I'll leave your imagination to the rest. It's horrendous. I don't know if I have the guts to press the next picture.
Oh, blimey.
Probably not. In fact, I won't for the purposes of common decency and things. I'll tell you what we'll do, as I'll flash it up very quickly. So
here we go.
If you're watching
quickly,
on YouTube,
look,
this
quick.
is the only way you'll do it. 3, 2, 1, and that's all you're getting. That was horrendous. Now, mate, for what it's worth, I know you've had a very difficult week, and I know you don't want to necessarily dwell on this, but I just thought, given the fact that he was very proud of you for the show that you are very much in charge of, I just thought we might share this picture with everyone. This is your granddad, isn't it?
Yeah. For those of you might know, some of you might know in the community, I said goodbye to my granddad last weekend, and he sadly passed away Sunday morning, early hours. 93, ripe old age, ex-Royal Navy chef. He worked in the later half of the Second World War as a chef on board HMS Rampura. He also later on was part of the Royal Naval Auxiliary Service as well, and served on board the Loyal Helper, which is one of the boats in the Royal Naval Auxiliary Service, again as a chef, as a cook. And I really do miss my granddad. He was a massive part of my life. And as you can probably see by the picture there, he had a penchant for
bright
waistcoats.
This is a lovely photograph, but Carlos, I'm sorry, we have to, and Armando, do feel free to chip in here. We have to talk about that waistcoat that you're wearing. What is that?
It's a very shiny waistcoat.
Right, okay, that's one word for it. I'm trying to think, Armando, how would you describe that to our audio listeners?
Oh, boy.
I mean, gold is in there, definitely.
It's, so it's something you would either see as a decorative banner in Chinatown.
Right.
Or perhaps the drapes in the living room. No, it's lovely, Carlos. It brings out a lovely color in your eyes.
Right. Yes.
Thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you.
I hope you bring that with you to North Carolina.
Oh yes.
I
think you should.
I do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But no, he's actually. Grandad, before he passed away, stipulated that at his funeral that he didn't want anyone to wear black.
Right, okay, nice colourful. And
nice
hopefully,
colour
in honour of him, everybody will be wearing loud waistcoats.
Exactly.
Let's hope that's what's going to happen. But lots of people saying lovely things in the chat room.
I know. Love you all, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony S saying, sorry for your, so sorry, Carlos, my condolences. Chris Griggs, thoughts are with you, Carlos. So sorry for your loss, Carlos. Obviously, poor Tanya, bless her, she's recently lost her mum as well, so our thoughts go out to you as well, my dear. Charles is saying, sorry to hear that, but 93 is a pretty good run. My grandmother was 99, and as sad as it was to say goodbye, I can only hope for such a long life. Absolutely. Good words, Charles. I like that. It's Tony says, is he about to attend an Indian wedding? Apparently it's called Golden Pea Shiny Yellow.
That's right. Very true, Micah. Very
Absolutely.
true.
It's the give me an upgrade waistcoat is what Richard Adams is saying.
Yeah, we could try that one.
And lots of love from Dr. Steph too.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Well. Anyway, we need to let this man go and fly a plane.
Yes,
so
Armando, you've got to go and fly some posh aircraft.
Absolutely, yeah.
I do. So lots of love to everybody on this lovely Valentine's Day.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, everybody take care. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.